Alrighty, everybody, good morning. I am condensing a whole lot of content into 50 minutes here today. So if we could please wrap up our side conversations. So good morning, everybody. My name is Bradley Dennison. I am the Director of Educational Technology Services here at College of the Mainland. I am a giant tech geek. In some ways, you could call me a futurist, I guess, and a technology generalist. And I have been marginally obsessed with artificial intelligence for a while now. I'm excited that everybody is starting to catch up to my at least curiosity in some of this content. And what I want to do today is share a general understanding of where artificial intelligence comes from and where we collectively can be taking it in higher education. I'm going to start with, my talking points here. What is artificial intelligence? What is a large language model? What is OpenAI? What is GPT? And then we'll talk about the limitations of artificial intelligence, as well as ways to ethically use AI in your daily life, and then we can talk a little bit about ethically using AI in the classroom. So what is artificial intelligence? We're going to start with something that's a little simple, something that everybody should be familiar with, passwords at this point, right? We're told that we have rolling changing passwords from ITS, and we change one digit, change one letter, right? Doesn't really make a difference because we're just following those password requirements. What is the easiest way to get into somebody's account? What is the easiest way to get a password?
Find it written down.
Right. A more reliable way, though, would be guessing every single combination of characters available. You could feasibly do it, maybe not in your lifetime, but you could run through every possible combination of letters, numbers, special characters. A computer piece of software can do that in the blink of an eye now. And so let's talk about how does that happen? Well, it happens through what they call brute force, or just sheer repetition. And artificial intelligence is really good at sheer repetition. Everything that we could do, AI is able to pull off quicker, essentially. On the topic of passwords, I do want to say that if you want to get away from being susceptible to a hack of a piece of software randomly guessing your password, longer passwords are better. This is, if you're an internet geek, you're familiar with XKCD comic on the internet. It's been around for a very long time. But it points out that if you've got a short password, if an AI software or a piece of software is written to randomly just select 10 characters, that's going to be a pretty quick find. If your password is 4 random words, correct horse battery staple, that's a whole lot more characters for the software to randomly select. And it's typically a lot easier for an end user to remember 4 random words versus Troubadour with a 4 and a 0 and an and, right? And so I wanted to bring this as the starting point because, again, we should all be familiar with passwords, and it gives you an idea of how computers function. So let's take it a little bit further. And when it comes to artificial intelligence, y'all have been interacting with it at least since 2016. Every time you've done an internet search, every time that you've interacted in Facebook or some other social media, every time that you've been in YouTube, you've been training their algorithms for a very long time. And so that is what artificial intelligence kind of started as, was this learning, predicting, trying to help simplify and guide you on the internet. And it was personalized to an extent within your browser on what was being shown to you. And now more than ever, if I were to Google what is artificial intelligence, my answers are very likely going to be different. My results are going to be very different than what Rebecca might have come up with. Because I'm looking at AI white papers, Rebecca might have just been looking, well, what is AI? And so our results are going to be a little bit different. Everybody in this room for different searches has trained their devices to some extent. Something that hopefully as educators we're all familiar with is the idea of constructivism learning. Artificial intelligence uses constructivism to learn. Instead of it being a toddler learning and taking in experiences and developing, it's the cloud, right? And so if we say knowledge is constructed, well, it's being constructed in the cloud by all of us participating in the internet. It's learning to learn as you learn. It is constantly learning from its experiences. It's learning from its input. It's learning from what is out there on the internet constantly expanding. Its learning is active, all right? Because the cloud is always on, it's always trolling. And there's so many different LLMs at this point, and they're all looking at different points of information and data on the internet. And then learning is a social activity. Well, that works for the online world because the internet is a social activity at this point. And then learning is contextual, and that's where the AI comes in and it starts applying logic to these things, right? And so we are essentially dealing with a robot toddler that is technically smarter than all of us put together. And speaking of that, if we talked about passwords, we talked about repetition. I'm going to show y'all OWL, or it might be AI Bert, I don't know. So I've got this sped up, but what it is somebody has built an AI model, a graphic representation of training this little square, Albert, to walk. There's a series of videos on this. If you want to look it up, it's AI Warehouse on YouTube. They actually taught it how to navigate mazes as just the square, but we're going to look at it real quick. Again, taking this idea of training, there's the sound now, of training artificial intelligence through repetition. And it is given rewards, which are listed in green as we watch this pretty quickly. There are negatives that are listed in red. And so the timer here is positively or negatively impacted by the actions of the little AI robot. And so I've actually sped up the YouTube video, which is already sped up on there because this takes a very long time. And this is across days of teaching Albert to functionally move. YouTube ads. I'm not used to that. But my point being, do check out AI Warehouse. Links are going to be in the PowerPoint. If y'all want to get your hands on that later, just shoot me an email. But that video shows the general idea of taking a brute force password hack into machine learning, right? It's just over and over and over. It's doing it so much more quickly than we can do. It's just condensed learning. So what is an LLM? LLM is a large language model. Everybody keeps referring to it as GPT, but that's like calling Dr. Pepper a Coke, okay? Learning language models are all of these AI tools that have been coming out. And so, definition, not gonna read that for you, but that's what we're talking about. We're talking about using the cloud for deep learning, and that's what the large language model is enabling. Deep learning is just fancy talk for cloud-based activity by artificial intelligence at this point. So what is OpenAI? This is probably the one that we're more familiar with because we've been talking about it more and more because ChatGPT has been all over the news for the last year. So OpenAI is an American company. They are the originators of the GPT platform. They are an institution. They are here to make money, though they haven't figured out how to yet. And so we'll move on to what is GPT? Generative pre-trained transformers, right? This can be applied to a whole bunch of different things. GPT-4, that's the current iteration that is publicly available of the large language model that can be used to generate text, that can be used to generate chatbots. DALL-E is one of the many art bots out there. Right now, my favorite is Midjourney. If y'all want to check that out, do some Googling. If you want to see some cyberpunk office characters from the NBC TV show, it's been generated by DALL-E, or Midjourney more likely. OpenAI 5 is a fun one because they said, well, why can't we teach this thing to play video games? And so they trained it how to play Counter-Strike, and it's better than most people. So you take it back to, like, some of you might be familiar with Bobby Fischer versus Robot Chess Playoff, right? The robot won. This is that on steroids because it is a squad of 5 playable game characters being operated by AI better than Bailey. I mean, you play it up, you know. And then again, we wrote back to ChatGPT. There's a big difference between GPT-4 and ChatGPT. GPT-4 is the one that can write the papers. GPT-4 or ChatGPT is the one that I've got at home that I've trained with all those emails I've been bothering you with for years. And I've taught it how to talk like me, which is scary. And so GPT is a whole lot of things. GPT just happens to be the generic term for a lot of it. So what is GPT? When we talk about artificial intelligence, well, is a spelling and grammar check going to fall into something like artificial intelligence? What about autocomplete? It's lived on our phones for so long, Microsoft Word incorporated it in the last few years. On your emails, in your Word documents, in your PowerPoints. Predictive text is now in your documents.
When you say the text, it guesses the next word.
Yep, and that is carrying through all of our technology. So text suggestions, right? Is this something in line with GPT? Is this cheating in a word processing document? I don't know. I'm asking y'all. Yeah. So let's look at the limitations, or talk about the limitations of artificial intelligence. OpenAI, the originators of the GPT platform, have totally backed out of trying to detect AI writing. Like last few weeks, as a matter of fact. They were like, no, we can't do this. Like, our own platform is now better at our stuff than we can detect. And that's because since 2016, we've been feeding these platforms content and information. It's been learning slowly, and then in the last 12 months, it has learned so fast. GPT-5 that's going to come out in the next 8 months-ish is probably going to be scarier than 4. So AI is no longer going to be determined as capable of detecting artificial intelligence, and we'll touch base on that some more as we go. Limitations of AI, this one's a fun one, hallucinations. Artificial intelligence hallucinates. It can make up references, it can make up content. It's gone to the internet, it's looked at as many resources as it possibly can, and then it's gonna say, well, all this information is probably right because it's deducing it from what's available to troll through on the internet, right? Doing hyperspeed internet searches. But then it'll be like, well, I need to put in a reference for this, and I looked at this white paper, and I'm just gonna make up a journal entry. There's no multiple sources for it to tell it where the sources came from, for it to do anything more than guess on where it's referencing from. Another fun one for hallucinations, if you've watched AI generative art, hands are terrifying, like a melatonin-enhanced nightmare. Like, nobody's hands are right in generative art. Well, not nobody, most of them are still pretty bad. And so it's putting that out there as apparently hands are hard to draw. Anybody in here doing art? I don't know. But it's run into that problem. But what's even more entertaining is that now that there is a cannibalism happening in the AI-generated art community, and it is referencing AI-generated art to create AI-generated art. So I guess that's AI-generated art inbreeding in some way, because you're starting to get really weird, random offshoots in some of the art. And the only way to prevent those kind of things like hallucinations or the hand issue is more prompting, more detail, right? At some point, to get quality content out, you're already writing a 2-page paper. It's just gonna do it for you with more references on the internet. Lack of transparency, that's a big one right now. I mean, we've got landmark case that's looking like for the SAG Guild, the Screenwriters Guild. They are now being told that AI-generated content is not copyrightable. And a part of that is because you can't ID where the sources are or where that content came from. Now, when it comes to copyright, of course, skipped brain. When it comes to copyright, of course, as soon as a human takes that AI-generated content and modifies it, well, all of a sudden it's copyrightable again.
Or not according to the U.S. Copyright Service. They've got a statement on there.
It's going to keep changing. There's all we can do is go based off of current court cases, and current court cases are going to keep evolving on it because this is a technology that's new and emerging and changing. But that lack of transparency is the problem because we don't know where that content came from, right? And so when it comes to the world of art, it could be stealing reference points from people's own generated content, their money-making content. It could be quoting content from sources and rewriting it to avoid plagiarism, which it's really good at doing, but you don't know where it's pulling that information from. And then one of the other ones that's a personal favorite of mine is that AI has an inherent bias because for the most part, it's trolling the internet for content, for information. The internet, for the most part, has factual content information. And so that means that there is a factual bias. And in some ways you can say that there's a liberal bias because AI is going to believe in global warming and climate change, right? It's going to say, well, 99 doctors agree, so I agree too. And so getting competing viewpoints out of artificial intelligence takes more prompting, more creating, more crafting, more telling it what you're looking for. So if we talk about using AI in your day-to-day life, we're going to look at 4 things, some that are still coming out, some that are already out right now. I wanted to start with Microsoft Copilot because I asked you all about spell checks and grammar checks and autocomplete. Microsoft is working on their version, Copilot. This is not GPT, this is not Google Bard, this is Office 365. This is going to be across the board in everything. So if Microsoft Copilot is integrated into Microsoft Word, what do you do about AI assistance in a written document? So Microsoft actually owns 49% of OpenAI, and so in turn ChatGPT. So they've already got a head start because they own a good chunk of what's already functionally working. And that's why we have to have these conversations now. The technology is moving so fast that we can't get ahead of it. We can't beat it. We have to work with it. And so we need to think about things like Adifi. This is an AI app that will help you watch video content on the internet and summarize it for you. So if you've got an hour-long video on YouTube that you want to get the information out of, it's going to watch the video. It's also going to be referring to the closed caption subtitles, and it's going to give you a Cliff Notes version of that hour-long content. Rev, Temi, this one's fun. It used to be Temi, but then they rebranded into the main company, but this is a powerful AI transcription service. For those of y'all that are making regular internet YouTube video content for your classes, for a small nominal fee, Rev can subtitle your content for you easily, effectively, better than YouTube. And YouTube is like 98% effective. This takes it the rest of the way for you. Interview AI, this is a fun one that can be used to train people for interviews. This is where we come back into this idea of prompting, right? And that's where I think as we go into the next few years, there's going to be more jobs built around these ideas of prompting. Because you have got to build so much information into the AI platform for it to have an ability to interact with you. And the better your information that you're putting in, the more information that you're putting in, the more accurate information you're putting in, the better that interaction is going to be. It's not going to be a silly journalist writing an article about the AI falling in love with them. It's going to be an actually effective tool for you to put to use for your classes or for your students to put to use for learning. They could take something like Interview AI. There's other platforms out there that do this where you're feeding it documentation, they could feed it their class notes, and they could use it as a study buddy, right? That's what this one's probably closest to. So if we talk about using AI in the classroom, and y'all are going to be smarter than me at all of this part, so hopefully y'all have some feedback on it. But for example, with an English class, having AI-generated prompts and then asking the students to actually grade the AI, to teach them in some way what AI is bad at. AI, when it comes to writing, is really bad at longer form writing. If you're given like 2-paragraph quiz questions, 2-paragraph writing assignments, AI is going to be a lot better at that because it's going to be harder to catch it in its complications, like repetition, like saying in the text that it is an AI generative model and it doesn't have the ability to report on that, right? Students will turn that in because they don't read what they're getting generated. But here's the thing, is bad. It doesn't matter if it was written by a human. It doesn't matter if it was written by an artificial intelligence. It doesn't matter if it was written by Chegg. Bad is bad. And so we need to keep in mind that instead of looking for artificial intelligence checkers, we find ways to identify the bad. And we'll come back around to that. What about a math professor? Now, what's really, really fun about AI and math is it's not great at it. You would think that robots would be amazing in math, but no, they're not. And that's being worked on. There are more AI platforms being developed to be better at complex math. But when it comes to basic math, so probably like math 310 around here, a math professor could ask students to use AI to solve difficult, big math problems. And then collectively, everybody work together to look at steps for how the AI got there. And more often than not, how did the AI get that wrong? Our professor could ask students to answer the following prompt: what is unique about Rembrandt's works? And then use something like DALL-E to generate a Rembrandt-styled piece of art. And then turn that into a prompt or a class critique by the students, right? So instead of the instructor having to come up with a new original piece, they come up with a new vaguely original piece because artificial intelligence stole it from somewhere. Computer science faculty member could develop an AI tool to grade and provide feedback on coding assignments. This one is fun because if you are teaching a simple coding class like Python, Python is pretty much on and off, yes, no, white and black, right? AI is really good at that because it's either right or it's wrong. If you give it a more complex programming language, though, you run into problems like the bad math or the hallucinations. So the simpler things, so like here with our Python class, this could be put into effect to help the faculty member automate tedious grading. So now I'm hoping to talk to y'all, like, what about y'all's classrooms? Where could you be incorporating these ideas? Where could you be both simplifying your life while hopefully incorporating in your class to teach your students where this is coming from and where it's going? Because again, this is not something we're going to get away from. It's not going to magically banhammer away. It's going to be here and it's going to constantly improve, and it's constantly going to be a threat if we don't think about different ways to approach it. So AI-generated writing, not yet sophisticated enough to produce the quality of work expected of college students.
May I ask a question?
Yeah.
Because in my experience, that isn't true. It can produce writing that is certainly what I would expect of a C-level calm student. And raising expectations would mean the vast majority of our students fail English.
How much effort went into the prompt for that C?
A shitload, thank
Yeah,
you.
exactly. That's the problem.
And your source there actually says AI-generated text can pass for human writing.
Absolutely it
So
can.
what exactly are you basing your claim that it's not sophisticated enough to produce the quality expected?
It's only as sophisticated as the end user building that prompt. If you just take the assignment writing prompt, it's a couple of sentences, and you plug that into GPT, it is drastically different than if I were to say, okay, GPT, you are a sophomore level college student. Your writing style is this. The content is this. Your knowledge base is this. To get an A-level paper, it takes a lot more work. To get a C-level paper, it takes a lot more work than the copy-paste.
It does not.
Fair, Elaine, and I'm not here to argue around ideas or like differences in experiences, because my experiences are going to be different than your experiences, and this is a generalized statement.
That as an English professor, like, you know, we judge this, whether or not.
Sure, I'm not telling you how to grade or what to do.
Right. So, but what I'm saying is that the problem with kind of your case that bad is bad and we should grade the quality of assignments without worrying where it came from is that this is when we're teaching, it does matter where it came from.
Sure.
Because what we're trying to do is we're trying to teach students to achieve certain learning outcomes. And if they're using something as a shortcut and they're not doing the learning, then they're not achieving those outcomes.
Sure. I'm not arguing any of your points. I'm trying to present this as information and content and a reality that's not going away.
Right.
And we have to start thinking about how to approach these things differently moving forward because of that, because of what you're saying.
Right. But well, we'll talk about this tomorrow in the faculty senate session. But so there's no sense in really debating it now. But also I had a question about that, which was if AI is constantly changing, and as you said, GPT-5 is going to come out, it's going to be totally different. One of your suggestions was to ask students to evaluate what AI is bad at.
Mm-hmm.
So is that really useful to teach if it's going to be better at that in 2 months?
Don't know. I genuinely don't have an answer for you there. But the technology is going to keep improving. And that is a valid point. But nonetheless, a simple prompt, regardless of how good the AI gets, is still not going to put out the same quality content of somebody that's writing an A paper, right? That's not going to change, at least for now. Was that a hand and then a hand? Or?
I just find it interesting is that we run the nursing simulation lab upstairs, and it's interesting that now the simulations or the mannequins now link into this artificial intelligence where they, whatever you ask it now, like it knows how to respond based on what people have written on the internet. So it can ask you it can pull people's medical records. It is.
Oh, don't.
Mannequins will move their arms and have stroke. It's crazy.
Neuroscience right now is working with artificial intelligence and large language models to do predictive imaging. So the general theory is that it looks at brain waves that are being read and it results in activities. Sometimes it could be the creation of an image, right? It's being worked on, it's being done. It's when we're talking about writing papers, no offense to the idea of writing a paper, but that's the least of what this content is going to be able to do.
I'd like to say one thing about the writing of the papers.
Yeah.
Help me answer. So I know that ChatGPT was really for the writing piece that comes out, and this is what most students use, that it was more designed for technical style writing. So you might notice that it's grammatically correct, it's organized, but it really lacks voice, which is its biggest issue, and it makes it the easiest to figure out, oh, that definitely, because like the more you read, the more you see ChatGPT, the output, the more you start to recognize that it has its own voice and style, which sounds like an old, boring encyclopedia article. So that's one way to recognize that. So there are other ones out there that apparently have more creative bent, which might make things tougher in the future. But for right now, I think most students, when they do that, are going to ChatGPT because that's the most known one. So.
Grammarly, though, actually allows you to select the tone, and so it paraphrases what you've written, and it gives you 4 or 5 different options to change the tone to like professional, casual.
Also, turn it in. Flags, if they use Grammarly, it gets flagged like around 72%. So I'm now telling students, do not use Grammarly. It's not the best.
Right.
It's not the best editing program out there anyways. I do teach them and allow them to use Pro Writing Aid, which is more suggestive of grammar and output, but it's still an editor tool, where Grammarly has an integrative AI underneath the surface, so it is getting flagged. So I've been telling them, don't use that one at all.
Right. Oh, and Perplexity actually lets you download your own papers. You can take papers you've written, download them into Perplexity. It picks up your writing style, and then we'll write from your writing.
I wasn't kidding when I said that I fed with chatbot all of my D emails from the last several years. Like, that is not out of the question to teach it your writing style. Now, of course, if your writing style is trash.
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah.
Related to this discussion on tone and style. In recent years, I've tried to revise some of my writing prompts for students instead of having them just describe or analyze a concept, have them discuss some subjective or personal experience with that concept. Is that wise, or is that, what do you think about that approach?
There we go. So I'll jump ahead a little bit. So you're talking about the students incorporating personal experiences, incorporating humanity into their writing, right? So one of the really fun things about artificial intelligence right now is it's still not great at critical thinking. So if you can combine those two and share that with your faculty or with your peers, that's going to be an amazing solution, because that's what it is. It's personal experience and critical thinking. And then, of course, shorter prompts, longer prompts. So there's so many different variables to look at here. That's why I don't have an answer, Lane. It's just, there's so many variables, so many platforms, so many people out there. AI, GPT, LLMs, they're not the bad guy, it's the people that are misusing it. I've met with a few of our high school groups since April now, and we've talked about technology in general. And while most of them admit to using it at some point for submitting something, they were intelligent enough to quickly figure out that it didn't get them the better grade. Not saying all of them were honest in that statement, but for the most part, they're going to try it out. And for the most part, they're going to realize that the effort it takes is just, I might as well do the paper. What's fun on this one is you're talking about, backtrack. Hopefully that was a little bit of a good. Rebecca, I will come back around to you.
No, I was just trash.
Ah. So y'all are talking about detecting AI writing, talking about Turnitin. Probably my favorite example, or not my favorite example, my favorite suggestion right now is to, instead of worrying about it as AI generated content, treat it more like plagiarism, treat it more like they paid Chegg $50 to get a paper. Generalized statement, not going to work for everybody, right? But trust your plagiarism checker on the detection of content more than the AI detection for AI content is basically what I'm getting at. Because again, what we're trying to find is we're trying to find bad. We're trying to find ways to improve the students. I don't know if that means that down the road we'll have classes that instead of teaching programming, we're teaching them how to build immaculate prompts for artificial intelligence, right? But at least for us, I would not stake my my livelihood on saying with 100% accuracy that a student used an AI piece of software unless they copy and pasted the part that said, I'm an AI piece of software. I'm not that much of a gambler. But having conversations with students similar to how you might have had about plagiarism, similar to how you might have had of them using a writing service, right? Have those conversations with your students. Establish your expectations at the beginning of the semester about what quality that you're looking for. Take into content like that AI doesn't have personal life experiences, it just borrows from everywhere. Start just trying to re-examine how you're giving these assignments. Ooh. Yeah. Questions? I may not have answers. This is, each of these areas could have easily been an hour conversation in and of themselves. Yes, sir, Steve.
I think what we really need to do is emphasize one of our core outcomes that is personal responsibility, which is making ethical decisions. We need to pound that into their heads that what you're doing there is unethical behavior and wrong.
And you say that, and I kind of wonder, I have to laugh a little bit. We talked about in the DE committee about including some sort of ethical statement for our online courses, right? That the student acknowledges that they know that they have expectations, that this is considered cheating, this is considered cheating, and this is considered cheating. So maybe we recircle and visit that idea again. But ultimately, we all just need to be on the same page of how we approach it.
Admittingly, I don't know a whole lot about using ChatGPT or any of the AI prompts. So if the user is versed enough to feed it prompts such as write a scientific paper in APA format using direct quotations, you mentioned that AI can hallucinate, so it could even be, it would give a paper that is written in APA, has all the quotations, and is not correctly pulling where that reference is from?
Correct. There was this year a lawyer who got assigned a case, and I guess because of a time crunch, they used a LLM to build their defense or case or whatever. And when they started trying to look at their argumentative references, and they didn't exist, a judge was like, "What are you doing?"
That's actually one of the most reliable ways that I found to detect AI
Yep.
in student research papers is just using like the basic Turnitin, and you can, you guys know when you use Turnitin, you can exclude bibliography, so it doesn't match. Don't do that. Have it match the bibliography, because if there is no match for the sources on the bibliography, those sources don't exist. and so you know it's something else generated. That's like the quickest, best, most proven
100%.
shortcut. And Chris Kimbark was great with it. So, you know.
Do you think maybe that's one of the improvements they're really working on?
That is a hard one, right? But
Also, I fed it in. I tried this myself, like create an essay and ask it for MLA, blah, blah,
Yeah.
blah. And it was not formatted correctly for MLA or any of that.
it tries really hard.
Awful. So it was really noticeable that I would never grade it as correct. So right now, it's not there for sure, so sure.
So I just want to make a statement here based to a point that Brad made about towards the end of your presentation here about what do we do? Do we teach to find the bad, or do we kind of teach to read the prompts? And I'm on a different side of the house of this than the majority of everybody else in this room. So here's the other side of this is, in my world, in the technology and security world, we do teach you how. It's all about how to feed the prompt. It's all about how to create the right set of prompts to get the right result. And as AI in classrooms, it's one of those things where ultimately we're reaching a point where we have to understand that we're going to need to do both. Just depending on what side of the house, what are you teaching? Where you are. One of the most, for those that don't know, I'm Aaron Hensley. I'm the network director for the college. I'm also a certified ethical hacker. So I follow this from a very, very different perspective. And in my world, a lot of this is used. Right now we're kind of racing against the clock.
Yep.
Can we be smart? How long can we be smarter than AI? Whereas I think, from an education standpoint, one of the things is we need to learn how to use it better. How do we implement it? How do we work around it? How do we work with it? And it kind of comes from all aspects of education, not just technology, not just, writing, but, everything. Where do we learn how to work with this?
No, I'm no tech Luddite, and I'm no ethical hacker. I get excited that I can use Google Bard's LLM to help me craft smart home scripts, so that when I start the laundry, it starts playing Led Zeppelin for no good reason.
So since we started being able to see the AI,
Yeah.
99.9% of my students are using Grammarly. I will ask them before I say he's flat out going to zero, right? And I get Grammarly. I think I've got one or two that said ChatGPT.
Sure.
Serious, come on. So I just put a thing in my syllabus that says it. Go to the tutoring center. If you're going to don't use these things, because I'm going to give you 0.
And that's what I like. If you can put that, if that's something you can actually put in your syllabi, that if I suspect this, we're going to have this, right? Your expectations up front, I know they don't all read the syllabi, but at least putting it in there as your upfront defense of, hey, I'm suspicious.
Oh, it's also in my assignments down there.
Perfect. Bevan, I'll come to you next.
Well, I'm coming at it from the other side as a parent.
Yeah.
Of a college-age student.
Yeah.
And what really concerns me about all of this is how it's teaching our children not to think for themselves.
That was already happening with the device in their pocket.
And confusion, because I've got a student whose teachers tell them, use Grammarly.
Mm-hmm.
But then if they come into another class and they're not paying attention to a teacher that says they're going to get they
Mm-hmm.
use it, and they've been using it because other teachers have been telling them, they're not paying attention. But also, they don't think for themselves. We used to go and research stuff. Now they just get online and assume that it's correct because it's on the net or on the web or whatever, And when I ask my kid, what are you doing? You're taking a test online, and why are you over here Googling the answer? Well, that's using my resources. Because why do I need to go into the textbook when I can just type it in and it gives me the answer?
You've just
That's what I would do if I was anywhere
You've just described the last 20 years.
Yeah, what do we do in business if we don't know the answer? We Google it.
That's right.
We don't research for 2 hours. We Google it and it gives us an answer in 5 seconds.
And we hopefully put some critical thinking to what comes up.
Googling
Yep.
isn't always correct. Right, but that's not what they think in this day and age
Yep.
because they've grown up with it and they just assume it's correct because it's on there.
Yep.
And it's really scary what that's looking like for us in the future.
Technology is on an accelerated pathway. I mean, like literally the last 20 years was ridiculous, the last 5 years was insane, and the pandemic made the last 2 impossible to keep up with.
Yeah, and then
A lot of
what's
GP,
our college degree kids gonna look like in 5 years from now?
a lot of the LLMs got better because people were stuck at home.
We do work with plagiarism seminars
Yeah.
for the student services, and they also send me things
Yeah.
to run through. Of course, be aware that like Turnitin even will not state that they are not 100%, they are 100% accurate.
They're not.
It's going to be inaccurate. Apart from concrete things that are easily identified to identify AI or plagiarism in general, the same kind of context that you would identify plagiarism can be applied across the board. Generally, when I see different things, it's usually a tone of voice change.
Yep.
Where a student would not typically write in that manner, and that's the most easily identifiable way to determine whether or not they used AI generated.
Yep.
I also agree with Brad on the terms of the prompt is really what matters. Because when you are looking at critical thinking, you can force an AI into thinking critically, but you have to really force a prompt on it. You have to continuously alter that prompt and force it into thinking, because most of the time there is an ethical restraint within the AI, and they'll go, I'm an AI, I can't answer that, or I can't do this, and you can force it around those ethical boundaries. So it's really about what the student is putting into that prompt or how they're adjusting it. And then even after what it kicks out, if they are reading through that and identifying a hallucination or something else, they can force it to regenerate that and actually bring up something that is factual. I've experienced hallucinations in AI just having to generate code or script or different things. And all you gotta do is go, hey,
Fix this.
yeah, this was not correct. This is not attached to anything I asked you to do. And it'll go, I'm sorry, here you go, and it kicks out something that's correct.
And I strongly suspect the students that are relying on GPT for all their writing aren't going to go to that extra depth of a level of
No, they usually
Word.
don't even bother to read it.
right.
I mean, I had one that was like in conclusion like 4 times. So,
Anyway, when I was in grade school and I thought I was smart by like writing itty bitty tiny scripting cheat notes, right? I was just teaching myself to memorize it on accident. I was trying to cheat and I did it right, yay. In a lot of ways with artificial intelligence, you're trying to cheat, and if you want to do it right, you're going to put that effort into committing it from your memory anyway.
I don't remember my source, but I read an article about AI, and because it's become so much more used, it's actually getting dumber. And so the quality of what it's putting out, because it's had so much more garbage put in.
And then it's also that cyclical cannibalism problem.
Yeah. So that the output is actually getting less intelligent as it's being used by more people.
Go figure. More people make it less intelligent.
I mean, could you like something?
It came to me, I didn't come to it. It artificially knew to come to me. It was a couple weeks ago, though, I saw that in an article. But it was just saying that it's becoming even less intuitive or less intelligent.
The less specialized the platform is, the less intelligent it's becoming.
Yeah.
however, this
They
is
did that
interesting.
because it's really AI stuff. That's how AI reacted. The more that it had input, the more that it went down.
Somebody thought it was intelligent to put IBM's Watson on Twitter decade-ish ago. It got kicked off real quick because it became like a white supremacist.
However, what's interesting is that companies and businesses can actually now create their own in-house AI that's offline that they can use for their employees to feed and create, and that's happening in small businesses everywhere.
And this has just become so popular, but I was telling Brad, my brother had classes in AI in 1986. I mean, he's been involved in this kind of stuff for that long. It's been around for a really long time.
And it's getting better, quicker, every day. We got to work with it. Yes, Tomas.
I think in this in like student services realm, I think this is good at helping. Because I had like an idea, it's like, why don't we have like an AI advisor? Like, what am I missing?
You can.
How many courses am I away from finishing up? So I see it in a different light, as in, this is a helpful tool when students can access this, and it can be tailored to them if we're using some of our data here at COM. So I get a lot of, this person told me this, and this person told me that, and that person, well, the AI just is reading everything that we have that's standard, so everybody has the same message. So I'm hoping that we can develop something like that at some point in the student services realm, just higher ed.
Some colleges have spent money on a website bot that they've basically fed policy handbooks, everything to. Connecting it to things like student information for classes needed to graduate. I don't know where that comes into things like FERPA because you're,
Maybe if
yeah,
password protected,
right.
you know, there's security.
That's where,
You could do a data strip.
Yep.
And just put in like class relevant or like degree relevant data from students' data record.
good job, y'all are eliminating somebody's job, stop.
So yeah, the other thing I had in mind
No. Yes, ma'am.
I have actually played around with the AI.
Yeah.
And while it has been said that it stops the critical thinking,
Yeah.
only to a degree, because if you want an A paper to come out of that AI, you have to use critical thinking to tell it what it wants.
For the
Basically,
scripting,
Amelia Bedelia. You have to tell that computer exactly what you want,
Yep.
because it gives you exactly what you ask for.
Prompt smithing.
So if you're getting the paper that you want, you have to use your critical thinking to ask for that paper.
Yep.
And then if you have the hallucination with the citation, you go down, you check you check your citations.
Yep. Yeah, in an ideal world.
This citation is completely made up,
Or if your case reference is made up, you know.
then you have to go find it.
Yep. Spot on.
And because, I'm dealing with students and et cetera, I was like, okay, let's actually do this. Let's see what is going to be involved in an A paper. And I've spent hours sitting playing with AI. It actually does require
From the end user, absolutely.
to go from that C paper to the A paper.
Yep.
It takes a while.
For the student to put that in, yeah.
You actually have to on purpose get an A paper, not just put in, I need this.
Yep.
I need this, and it needs to be this many pages, and it needs to be this form, and it needs to be on this subject, and you need to have this insight, and I've even gone as far as gone, okay, here are my references. Write a paper based on these references.
Yeah.
And it will.
Yep.
And then I've run it through a couple plagiarism programs, and it doesn't flag.
Nope. The more effort you put in, the better the
Right.
quality out.
But is that not still teaching?
Teaching critical thinking, yeah. AI is not using critical thinking. That is what you're teaching the student to do.
So if the student if they're going to cheat, at least they're learning something while they're cheating.
I make.
But if you're teaching English and your goal is to teach them how to write an AI judgment
Right.
for them,
Yes.
then it's a lot more problematic. But one of the issues with saying, like, you have to give it a good prompt is that, at least in English, we give our students written prompts that have all the information that they need. Use this format, write this many pages. We write the prompts for them. And so they can just put that in.
And that's where we come down to, can you incorporate the personal experience idea? Can you incorporate critical thinking? Can you force them to reference things that you just have to check every time, right? It's a bad, maybe not a bad reference, but if you take back to like the emergence of Wikipedia and what Wikipedia was, and it was like, oh, Wikipedia is bad because anybody can get on there and edit that content. And instead, 20 years ago, we could have been like, well, Wikipedia is a collection of information. Look at the resources at the bottom of the Wikipedia page, go to what was cited, use critical thinking to evaluate if that's a good source, and use that to help you write. It was a lot easier to say Wikipedia is bad.
I developed a writing project for the fall. It's a 4-step piece, and keeping in mind that everybody at some point in their careers probably writes a set of procedures. And so the first piece is to just draft your own very simple set of procedures and then feed that into AI as your prompt, asking for more details. But then take that and become an editor, an examiner of that for accuracy, completeness, to expand upon it, to make it more logical, add images and all that. And then write about your process and what changes you had to make. And then I did it myself as an example. And I was even surprised at how much work and thinking I had to do to actually create the set of procedures even after plugging it into the AI. So that was a really interesting experience, and I plan to do this in the fall with the students to see how they handle this. But I just feel like they're going to be using it in their work world, so we can't act like it's just plagiarism, because it's more than that now.
We are coming up on pretty close to the next, everybody getting to the next sessions. 2 things. Hopefully I'm invited tomorrow. Yay. I'll do this though. I'll be.
You're an honorary senator.
Yay. Yes, ma'am.
This is not about, well, it is Brad's session, but I appreciate that so many people are here this morning.
Yeah.
Because I was part of creating the schedule, and I said, why don't we do anything at 8 o'clock? Oh, you can't get people to come at 8 o'clock? So that's why I took your picture, because thank you for all the people.
And I mainline coffee anyway, so this was easy.
No, but I'm saying though, I mean, this many people.
Either love me or you hate me. So I did want to end this. Those of y'all that are faculty, those of you that are going into the fall semester with new ideas on how to approach what we are looking at, which is the future of AI, I have 2 $5 Starbucks gift cards if anybody is interested in writing a short blog piece for the EdTech blog site. So shoot me an email if you're interested in sharing, and you'll almost have enough money to buy a coffee.